Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us to our workshop today. This workshop is related and is part of our Power Up project, which we call Power Up, the Catalyst for Social Innovation in the Energy Market. And this workshop is organized by the University of Manchester in collaboration with our project partners from ECLO and EcoPower. And the workshop is, I'm going to share the agenda for today. So in the first part of the workshop, we're going to have two presentations. One presentation is on the toolkit, which is a toolkit about how to engage with energy vulnerable households and vulnerable households in general. And the second presentation will be provided by Finn from ECLO, and it's going to be based on the experience, ECLO's experience with their engagement with vulnerable households in ECLO. After each presentation, there will be some time from questions, and today we are going to use one of the toolkits that we have suggested in one of the tools that we have suggested in the toolkit for engagement, which is Mentimeter, but Amy will organize that part after her presentation. The presentation from the University of Manchester will be delivered by Amy Crowther. And I also would like to thank officially Manon Burbridge, who actually was really active in the preparation of the toolkit. Then we will have a break, a very brief break, a coffee break, if you manage to get a coffee in 5 minutes. And then we're going to have the second part of the workshop, which is going to be the interactive part of the workshop, where we're going to work in small groups, and we are going to actually engage in a plenary discussion and with questions. And in that part is fully organized by Finn and from ECLO and Christina from EcoPower. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Amy to share her presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us once again. And as we said, a copy of the recording will be available for all of those who were not able to join us today. Thank you very much.
Hopefully you can see my screen all okay. Yes. So like Saskia said, I'm going to be introducing the toolkit deliverable to everyone. And again, to reiterate that this is Manon's work. I have newly joined the project. I've been here for 2 weeks. So I'm very much taking her credit, but she absolutely did all of this. So in terms of what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to first of all introduce the deliverable before focusing on what engagement is and sort of the models which exist to support the development of engagement strategies, and then focusing on why we need to incorporate vulnerable groups into engagement practices, approaches that can be utilized to support this, and then ending with some quick conclusions and questions. Like Saskia said, going to be using Mentimeter for the Q&A. So you can add your questions throughout the presentation. If you go to menti.com and pop in this code or scan the QR code, or I did pop the link in the chat, which hopefully should work. You can pop your questions and we'll be able to go back to them later on. And it's really handy because you can see the other questions which other people have put on, and you can vote them up. So then they get sort of prioritized in terms of being answered. So hopefully that will work if technology is my friend today. And the stuff's in the group chat, so I'll be able to carry on and you'll be able to access that hopefully. So quick introduction to the deliverable. The idea is for it to be a practical guiding toolkit for supporting engagement, not only with those vulnerable groups and in energy projects, but sort of in broader projects and social and energy spaces, and really useful for practitioners to be able to draw upon. I've also popped a link to this into the chat as well, which I know Manon shared it with everyone, but just thought I'd really emphasize it because it is a really, really good document for helping plan engagement strategies. So speaking of engagement, what is engagement? It is the act of building a relationship and the methods used to build this relationship. So it's a process which happens over time, and engagement comes in multiple forms, from information sharing to capacity building to collaboration. So there's different levels of interaction and involvement of participants and target audiences. And engagement activities are really important because they can support the success of projects by having people involved. So to support engagement, different models exist, which can help with both the planning of the overarching engagement strategy, but also the specific engagement activities themselves. And these are presented in more detail within the deliverable, but just thought I'd highlight them now just to draw your attention to them. So in the blue box, these are two models which can be drawn upon to support the overarching strategy of engagement. So working out the level of participation which is needed and the methods which can be drawn upon. Whereas the green box includes models that focus on specific engagement activities. So whether that's fostering and managing relationships, supporting effective communication, or facilitating behavior change, these can be drawn upon sort of plan your strategy and sort of the activities undertaken. And like I said, presented in more detail than the deliverable, and are really useful for drawing upon to plan ahead for what you're going to be doing. So the focus of the deliverable was on how to support vulnerable groups being involved in engagement. And this is really important because typically, and highlighting the research, is that vulnerable groups aren't incorporated into research opportunities or engagement activities. And there are a number of reasons which contribute to this. So failures in research design itself, so they've not been incorporated into the plans, or this belief that vulnerable people are difficult to reach or hard to incorporate into the research. And this is problematic because by not incorporating these individuals, it runs the risk of reinforcing existing biases and sort of perpetuating marginalization. And research has highlighted how these vulnerable groups need to be incorporated into decision-making and engagement processes in order to appropriately address energy poverty issues, because it allows their perspectives to be understood, and they can understand how initiatives can be developed in a way that reflects their needs and also their capabilities and priorities. So really important to incorporate vulnerable groups into the research. And based upon the literature analysis which Manon undertook, 4 best practices for how to incorporate vulnerable groups into engagement practices were highlighted. So building trusting relationships, equitable processes and procedures, diverse membership, and tangible benefits / supportive reward structures. And just going to briefly introduce each of these now, and there is a lot more detail on them in the deliverable, which again, like I said, is really beneficial to go and read through. So in terms of building trusting relationships, this builds on the idea that trust is dependent on having close relationships, consistency in the approach, having a really authentic process, and supporting individuals in being involved in decision making. So they can be supported by working with established groups, so reaching out to community groups or support groups and drawing upon them. So there's a sort of trusted intermediary involved, ensuring transparency by being very open about the activities that are going to be undertaken and how information is going to be incorporated. Offering support rather than intervention, which is, I think, one of the most important. So it's about understanding and listening to people rather than saying that you know the answer, seeing what they think they need and how to incorporate those views into the approaches going forward. And avoiding stigmatizing language, so being really mindful of the terminology drawn upon. So rather than saying people are unable to afford their energy bills, which places the onus on them and it's sort of like their fault, it's sort of talking about like current social situations mean that energy bills are rising, which creates issues in terms of paying and increases the inaffordability. So just being mindful of how you phrase things can really support the development of trusting relationships. The next best practice highlighted is the idea of ensuring there are equitable processes and procedures. So making sure that a project is fair in how it's conducted and its outcomes. So ensuring that the approaches for engagement and also the outcomes are relevant for the local identity, situation and culture. And there are a number of approaches which can be drawn upon to support the development of equitable processes and procedures, ranging from recruitment methods, so how you actually access and recruit the individuals that are going to be participating in the engagement events. So adopting multiple ways of advertising, so not going just through one channel, but multiple channels, and ensuring that there's sort of a gender and cultural sensitivity to the approaches developed. And then this sort of feeds into not only in how you recruit people, but also how you conduct the engagement processes. So making sure that the facilitators who support the engagement activities are diverse. And often research has highlighted that if you ensure that facilitators have a common sort of characteristic or an understanding to those that are the target group, it can really support building the trust and relationships mentioned before and facilitate engagement outcomes. And also this idea of enabling self-referral, which has been drawn upon in previous projects such as Step In, where individuals themselves are able to say that I identify as being within this particular group. So I identify as being energy vulnerable. I'd like to access this support. So letting individuals have the empowerment to sort of identify how they are and sort of access the resources that they feel they require. Then moving on to the third best practice, which is the idea of diverse membership. So ensuring that engagement events are accessible to everyone and that as diverse group as possible is able to attend. So this is able to be ensured by both thinking about how you are constructing the engagement event, but also when and where you're constructing the engagement event. So in terms of the activities themselves, making sure that there are no language, literacy or communication barriers which could prevent individuals from participating. So a number of ways in which this can be approached, such as ensuring that events are delivered in the first language of the target group, but also moving away from sort of engagement events that rely on words and language, but using alternatives, so images or sort of someone used Play-Doh to construct things before in their engagement methods. So like moving away from language being the fundamental aspect of the engagement activity, using accessible formats, but also thinking about when and where. So making sure that locations are accessible for those with varied needs, but also thinking about when and the timings and considering the rhythms of everyone's day. So childcare routines, such as dropping children at school and when to pick them up, can actually be a barrier for women to participate in engagement activities historically, but also thinking about larger religious and cultural occasions, which may restrict the groups which are able to participate in the engagement activity. Then finally, the final best practice refers to tangible benefits and supportive reward structures. So it's really important to make sure that engagement events are worthwhile for those attending and making sure that they have tangible outcomes and they support personal development and empowerment. So really ensuring that they are of use and benefit to those who are attending. And then alongside this, there's the idea of whether rewards should be provided to those who participate, and rewards can come both in terms of financial, but also alternatives. So financial rewards in the literature are shown to support recruitment because everyone's like, oh, I'm able to get paid for participating in this engagement event. But there are sort of issues with it, both in terms of ethical concerns, such as risks of coercion and sort of people feeling they have to say a certain thing because they've been paid to participate, but also impacting the recruitment with individuals falsely claiming that they're eligible to participate because they can see that they're able to be paid to participate. So considering these sort of drawbacks of financial rewards, it highlights the potential to draw upon alternatives such as gifts and vouchers or volunteering at particular organisations. And I quite like this one of celebrating the achievements as a group, so recognising those who have participated in the engagement activity as part of the broader research team. And that can even include sort of including them as co-authors on papers and demonstrating that they've actively contributed, so recognising that. So as I have been sort of discussing, engagement is really important to support the success of projects, and there's really a need to be mindful of how you approach engagement and making sure that it is accessible and engaging to individuals for them to participate. And within the deliverable, there is a catalogue of tools which can be drawn upon to support the engagement of individuals, and the different types of these tools helps ensure that there's inclusivity, supports all voices being heard, helps in creative engagement and supports co-creation. And I've just picked out 3 which I have had experience of using before and found them to be really effective. So Kahoot is a game-based tool, so you can create questions or pose suggestions and individuals have to respond, and you get more points the quicker you respond. Really good way of getting people engaged, because I think inherently there is a human desire to be competitive and to win, and it's really fun. Mentimeter, which we're drawing upon today for the Q&A, can also be used for other things. So I have used it before in teaching to develop word clouds. So you ask students, for example, what do you think energy poverty means? And then they can write words of how they would describe it. And then the more responses with the larger the word. So it sort of creates this like visual presentation of key ideas and themes. And you can do other things such as polls and quizzes on Mentimeter as well. And then finally, there is Miro, which Fienne's going to be drawing upon later, which is this collaborative whiteboard where everyone can sort of put down their ideas together and really build up an understanding of different topics. So just to wrap things off, engagement is the art of building relationships, and it's really important for ensuring projects succeed. However, research has highlighted that vulnerable groups are often not included in research and engagement activities, despite their involvement being critical in order to address different issues. And so different practices can be undertaken to support the involvement of these groups, and best practices have been identified for how to do this. And as outlined in the deliverable, but also mentions then, online and interactive engagement tools are really useful for supporting accessible and inclusive engagement activities, and they can facilitate successful outcomes from that. So hopefully this will work, and it should show the questions, but it's saying there's no questions. Let's see if anyone has any questions. Now would be the time. But if there's no questions, we can just move on to Fienne.
Okay, Amy, will we use the same link for Mentimeter during my presentation?
Yeah, we can use the same one.
Okay, so if anyone has questions during my presentation, just go ahead and put them in Mentimeter, and then we can look at them at the end of my presentation. I'll just need to share my screen. You should be able to see my screen, I think. Yeah, all right. So I think Amy has done a wonderful job, and Manon and Saskia, of course, as well, to explain a bit of the theoretical context and some inspiration about frameworks you can use for engagement in a broader sense when implementing your pilot, but also in the sense that it's getting more urgent and starting to talk with your target audience and to make your concept really fit the needs of your target group. And I will work a bit further on that and just explain how we are approaching those workshops in ECLO. It's by no means an attempt to give how to organize workshops 101 or a very theoretical presentation, but I just wanted to share how we are approaching it to start a discussion and maybe inspire some of you to do the same. We are now in exactly 1 month, the first workshop will take place. So we are fully, we're very busy with recruiting people for the workshops. And the past months, we spent a lot of time actually thinking about how the workshops should work, what all the practical stuff need to be, but also the concept, the content. We put a lot of effort in it because, do you see actually everyone's camera also, or is it, should I will just move it? Okay. Because we noticed very soon that we are all used to hosting workshops with co-workers, with partner organizations, but we quickly noticed that organizing these workshops with vulnerable people is something totally different. For starters, when we go to a workshop we are going there in a professional, how do you say, professional way. We are basically paid. It's part of our job description or project. For our target group, it's not something they are used to do. They are often not heard, as Amy said, in decision making in policy projects. So we should be aware of that during the whole process. It's a bit more complicated than just making some canvases, putting them on the wall and asking some questions. As I said before, this presentation just summarizes some of the reflections and choices we made during the preparation of the workshop series that is going to take place in 1 month. And maybe you can get inspired. Actually, the first question, which I think for us was really important, was what do we want to learn? Because we knew we wanted to involve the target group because they have something to say. Because they have a totally different frame of reference than we have, and they are actually the people that can tell us if the way we are thinking is the way to go, or how we should adapt it. So we really had to decide what kind of insights we would need to help succeed the project, because you can talk about everything. We could also do some workshops just exploring possibilities. We could have workshops really talking about the personal situations and the impact it has on their personal life and their capability to pay their bills, how that influences their daily life, for example. But we decided quite soon that we already have a quite clear plan of our pilot, what we want to do. And what we want to do in ECLO during our workshops is to check whether first there is interest in the pilot, but also which barriers still exist to participate. For example, the pilots in ECLO, where you have to subscribe for a social share of an energy cooperative. Some things we don't know yet. For example, is it okay to let the social services organize the subscription? Do people feel comfortable going there, or would they rather go to the housing department, or like all these aspects around the actual core of the pilot we want to co-create with the target audience, because they know what could work for them or not. But for other pilots, some of you might be, the workshops might be more useful to generate new ideas, to reduce energy consumption, or to check if you have a choice of 3 options in which should you invest, because you can check which of the 3 options is best suited for the needs of your target group. But these are some questions you can ask to make sure that after your series of workshops, you have learned things that really are complementary. I think you have some insights you can get from scientific research or the policy decisions that are already been made in your city. But you should really think about, okay, what are the gaps in our knowledge today? What can drive our pilot forward. Second question is, okay, we want to learn which barriers still exist to take part in our pilot and work around all the aspects around our pilot. Second question we asked was, okay, who are we going to ask these questions to? First, we defined some characteristics of our target group in general for the pilots. In ECLO, this means people entitled to some certain social benefits, also people living in social housing. So this has the target group. This is the target group of our pilots, but we also thought about how are we going to identify these people for our workshops, because we want to avoid, of course, that we have to do, for example, a whole income research. Or we have to be very strict about, oh, you can enter the workshop or not. We want to make it as easy as possible to enter the workshop while making sure that we are really speaking to our target group and not the broader society. So we decided to recruit via partner organizations that are already targeting vulnerable people. In this way, we make sure that most people they talk to are indeed vulnerable and are part of our target group without actually checking all this criteria we will check eventually in the pilot. And what we also decided to do was launch a broader communication in our city magazine, because of the energy crisis, this unfortunately not being able to pay your bills becomes reality for a large part of our society. So we want to give also the word to people that currently are not involved with those social services or other partner organizations, but do already have are at risk of becoming vulnerable households. So yeah, my advice here is you could have some criteria depending really on your pilot. For example, if you're working around the renovation of social housing, then of course you will check the neighborhoods. You will specifically recruit based on the neighborhoods. You can also have a set of people who already are in touch with social services. It could be elderly people. So really think about who are the target group, and then think, okay, we have a set of criteria. Can we really easily check those criteria for everyone wanting to participate in the workshop, yes or no? If the answer is no, you have to be a bit more flexible and think about ways to find those people without actually asking all the questions, because then you are at risk of scaring them away before your workshop actually started. And then third question we asked, and I think Amy already touched on that, is why would people actually come to your workshop? Because we want to learn a lot from them. We will have 6 workshops. Each of them will be on a Wednesday morning. It's about almost a full morning. So that's 3 working days in total. That's actually a lot of time. They will not be paid for that. So why would people come? So we really thought about how can we make the workshop series a win-win? What can we learn and what can they learn? What's in it for them? For us, that means that we provide not only the workshop itself, but each workshop, we have some time reserved for their questions as well around housing and energy. If needed, we will ask experts or partner organizations to help them with their questions. So that can be, for example, I got my energy bill and I need to pay extra. I don't know why. Can we? And then we just go through the energy bill and try to help them. I'm not sure which questions will come up, of course, because questions should really come from our target group. But really, we want to not only learn from them, but give them the opportunity to get support or ask the questions they have to us as well. Another aspect can be a community building. I think we already talked in previous presentations about an example in, I think it was Madrid, I'm not really sure anymore, but it was a city in Spain where they have a kind of group where vulnerable people come together and help each other out with energy related questions and problems. So it could be, because a lot of vulnerable people are also socially isolated. So for them, getting to know new people can be an advantage. What you could also do is couple your workshop to interesting activities. At first, we thought to organize also a visit to one of the wind turbines here in Eeklo, but because we only have 6 workshops, we wanted to make the most of it. And maybe it will be for, after the workshop series, we will maybe have an extra moment where we talk about the results of the workshops. It might be interesting to couple a visit to the wind turbine or something else to that. It's something we don't see every day, of course. And yeah, I think another thing that Amy already said is building trust and convincing people takes time. We have spent now 2 weeks in the community center. So each Wednesday morning, we are present there to talk to people. We both help them with, if they already have questions or problems with their energy bill, we try to help them already, but we also invite them to the workshop. And it's actually a quite time-consuming activity because, well, you first need to build a conversation, then explaining the project, and it's not that everyone gets really enthusiastic that they can, they are invited. So it takes time. We are there every week, so if we invited someone the first week, we will go back and try, if they are there again the next week, try to have a small conversation. Also, the people that already said that they wanted to attend, we ask their phone number and we will call them before the workshops and probably between each workshop again. So it's much more, recruitment is much more intensive than just making flyers and communication. We also spoke with the community center about that, and they really assured us that if you just put a flyer, no one will show up. You really need to talk to them regularly. They need to know your face. Personal contact is really, really important. They do it the same way for their own activities. For example, each Wednesday morning they go for a walk, and what they do is going into the cafeteria, talking to everyone. Oh, we are having this activity. Do you want to join or not? So it takes time, but it will be worth it. And then the workshops itself. So this is all with the preparation, but then we asked how will we make the workshops accessible? As I said in the beginning of my presentation, vulnerable households are a different audience than, for example, your coworkers. They're not getting paid for starters. They are also, maybe some of them are not used to a formal context where you give your opinion and it's valued and it leads to results. So it helps to think critically about the obstacles people can be confronted with when attending the workshops. Amy already gave some great tips. I will present you a framework we use for that. In Dutch, it's called the 8 B's. I tried to translating to words all starting with an A, but it didn't really work out. So it's just 8 keywords to keep in mind for a barrier-free service. It's something you can use both for your workshops and preparation. How can you make the workshop accessible, for example, but also for your service in general you're offering towards vulnerable citizens, but also citizens in a more broader sense. For example, if you are thinking about a one-stop shop, or you already have a one-stop shop in your city and you want to really reach more vulnerable citizens, you can use these 8 keywords to think more about possible existing barriers. I will go through them one by one. Some of them will be a repetition of what Amy already said. For example, is it accessible? So the location, bless you. For example, in Eeklo, Eeklo is quite a small city. The community center is quite central, so we decided to do the workshops there. But we are still aware that there is one neighborhood that's quite far from the center, and it's actually a neighborhood with a lot of social housing. So we are thinking about how we can include these people as well. Maybe we'll have some sort of more information session or sharing the results of the workshop in that neighborhood as well. We're still thinking about that. So it's about location, but also timing. For example, our workshop stops not at 12 o'clock, but at 11:45, so that people can go and collect their children from school if they have children. We already also checked with the community center that we don't have conflicting activities. If, for example, the walk on Wednesday morning is very popular, it just makes sense to try to snoop people away from that activity to your workshop. The next one is available. That's really about those administrative barriers, not only for your pilot, but also for the workshop itself. As I said before, we have a lot of criteria in mind for the actual pilot, but we wanted to make it as easy as possible to show up for the workshop itself. So we won't ask a lot of questions. We won't check if you have social tariff or not. It will come out during the workshop, we're sure. Then we also made sure that there's always that I'm always available for questions. So people, we really made a flyer with my face on it, my phone number and my email address, which is only used specifically for this project, so that they really know that if they have questions both about the workshop or about energy in general, they can contact me. Because available is also about, is the service I want to use open at the moment I can go there. And Amy already said about financial compensations, that it's that there are pros and cons, and one contra indicator we also heard about a lot in Belgium is if you have if you are entitled to some benefits, then this financial stimulus can actually conflict with that, and people could be at risk of losing part of their benefits. So we will probably provide a voucher for the supermarket or something like that to make sure that they are compensated for their time and ideas without risking any conflicts. Affordable, for a service is quite easy. Can people, for example, is energy affordable at the moment? No, because a lot of people cannot afford to heat their homes like it should be, because the energy prices are quite high. But for the workshop, it might be a bit more abstract, but you could think about if your workshop is not taking place in a very central location, or you have an area that's quite widespread, you can look is there a big transport, and if yes, maybe you can pay for the transport to the workshop. Same about childcare. If a lot of people with children will attend, maybe there should be a parallel activity for the children. But also cost is not, in this case, not only about money, but also psychological costs. A lot of people in vulnerable situations have dealt or are dealing currently with a lot. They have a lot on their minds. And that does also mean that if they have to do their story over and over again in the workshop, that it can come at a high psychological cost. So what we try to do is make the workshops in a way that the first workshop is really getting to know each other, very informal, not sharing all the hard things you have come across in the last year or so, and becoming more and more specific and personal during the workshops. We also use metaphors sometimes. So we will, for example, in the beginning of the first workshop, have a lot of cards with nice images on it. It's not related to energy, it's quite abstract, more like a small painting, but this you can use. But if you ask a question, for example, what does energy mean to you? People can choose an image and talk about that image more. So they are actually telling their personal story, but not in a very direct way. So these are all small tips to reduce a bit the psychological costs. The part of, is it usable for your pilot? This means, does it actually have an effect on people's living situation or their energy poverty risk? But also, are they in a situation that they can use it? For example, you could easily say that installing PV installations on roofs will probably decrease the energy bill. So therefore you could say, okay, it's a good measure, but do the people you want to target, are these, for example, people that rent a house? Then for them it becomes less and less usable. So these are things for your pilot to consider. For the workshop, it's really a translation. What's in it for me? Why would I attend? What benefits is there for me? Understandable is something Amy also already touched upon, using clear language, visual communication, and I really want to add also personal communication. For our workshops, we work together with an expert by experience, and she has been a real help in making the whole concept understandable for people. Sometimes we are not aware of some words we use, that they are actually not that common, or phrases that could be easily misunderstood. So it's good to have an extra opinion on that. And yeah, I would say you cannot translate anything into an icon or a visual, but we try to support as much as we can the language with some visual communication. And but we also noticed that we made, for example, a little flyer, not with the idea of just flyering, but when we have a conversation with people and they say that they want to enter the workshops, they get a small flyer with all just practical information. So it's not a whole presentation of the project. But still, we notice that for some people, it's hard to read. So we go through that together, and we will call them to speak about the practical information as well. Trustworthy, it's also about building these relationships. What will be really important in the beginning of the workshops is that we set clear expectations, not only about what are we going to do in the workshops, but also about the outcome of the workshops. For example, we know that in our pilot project, people that are already entitled to some benefits will not have a financial benefit when entering our pilots. So we should be clear about that at the beginning, so that we don't waste people's time and in the end they see, okay, I've shared all this information, actually it was not for me. But also some things will probably be already fixed for your pilot scheme before you start the workshop. So it's also very clear, important to be clear about what can be discussed, on what parts of your pilot can they have an influence, and what is already written in stone. For example, one thing we are going to test is those criteria I already mentioned. It's a set of criteria that's already existing in Belgium, but still we want to check with them by doing exercises if this is really for the target group, but also do people feel comfortable sharing all this information? So that is one aspect they can be influenced in the workshop. And during the workshops, it will be also very important to create a safe space to tell personal stories. For me, it's really helpful to work together with an expert by experience. So this means that my coworker for the workshops grew up in a situation of poverty herself, and she has had an education about how to translate her own translate her own experience into a broader context, and help people in poverty influence policy. So she really is not stuck in her own experience, but can be a sort of bridge between the target group and policymakers. And this is really helpful because she can also relate to the stories people tell. Then known, it's about communication. Amy already said it. Inviting people, finding people for the workshop, it's not so easy, but if you go through trusted intermediaries or partner organizations that already work with the target group, it would be really helpful. What I also noticed is that just being present in the community center makes it easier to start to talk to people. People already start recognizing you, and it's much more easy to establish personal contacts. And then understanding is about your own attitudes when entering the workshop or a conversation. This is about cultural sensitivities, but also different frames of reference. Because, for example, that's again why the expert by experience is very useful in this project, because she has a frame of reference of someone who grew up in poverty herself. So she can really, if you don't grow up in poverty, it's sometimes hard to know why people react in a certain way or why they don't want to be, for example, part of your pilot, even though you can really prove that it's financially suited for them. But she might be in this for us really helpful to indicate the underlying reasons and the aspects that we don't think of. And yeah, I noticed already that an open attitude is really important. I noticed, for example, in conversations with people that there are a lot of misunderstandings about how the government is tackling energy poverty, like you have in Belgium social tariff. A lot of people don't know, am I entitled or not? So one way we try to help them find out, but also I noticed that if they have a wrong conception, it's not my role in that moment to already say, no, you're mistaken, should be this or that. And that was, in short, my presentation. The second part, we will do this exercise. So the questions I presented, each of you can think about that for your pilots in the next part. But I just wanted to know if there are some questions. Amy, can you see the?
Yeah. I'll share my screen because I think last time I checked there were 3 questions. So
okay.
Give me a moment. One second. Here we go. So in terms of questions, can everyone see the screen? So one of the questions is, how many people do you aim for in each workshop? Do you think there is an ideal group size?
We try to involve 10 people per workshop. We decided that a bigger group size would be a bit hard to manage. Also, we will be with 2 or 3 facilitators, but if you have to ask the same question to 20 people, then you have fewer questions to ask, that's for sure. Also, the group's dynamics becomes really different if you have a large group. Some people might be afraid to speak up in a larger group. And if you have a smaller group, it might be harder to base your conclusions based on what 3 people say, for example. even though I'm really aware that 10 people is not statistically representative as well. But one thing we try to do is recruit more than 10 people, because we also aware that in the first workshop there might be 15 people. In the second, you probably will lose already some people that think, oh, maybe it's not a fit for my situation, or oh, I expected something else. So we try to recruit a bit larger, but I think around 10 people should be a good group size.
Wonderful. And then hopefully move down to the next question. Could you give a bit more detail on how you decided the criteria for who to include based on the pilot?
Okay, so maybe I have a question about the question. Is it how we decided the criteria for our pilots, or how did we narrow it down from the pilot to our workshops?
So it's actually my question.
Okay.
So how you narrowed it down from the pilot to the workshops. It was to do with that slide where you had the criteria. I just was interested.
So we in our official criteria for the pilot, we have a lot of formal indicators. For example, renting a house where the renting price per month is lower than 550 a month. So it's really some hard criteria, a yes or a no. We decided that we really don't want to ask people about their renting situation and not exclude people based on that. But we just decided on, okay, where can we find those vulnerable people? So we really made the assumption that the organizations with vulnerable people, if we talk to their clients or people involved with their services, will be more or less a fit with the official criteria we have. I mean, we are aware that maybe one or two are not really in the target group, and we have to live with that. Because it's that, or asking a lot of personal questions in the very beginning of our trajectory, which we want to avoid. And for the broader, so we already also made a kind of advertisement in the City magazine. So there we really worked on the wording, how to describe the project, so that, we didn't really mention, like, are you in energy poverty? Not like that, but we tried to make the wording so that people already can make a decision for their own if it's something for them or not. And then when they want to be part of the workshops, I will have a conversation with them on beforehand as well. So it's a bit of more personal evaluation than formal criteria. I'm not sure if that's an answer to your question.
No, amazing, thank you. I realize it's quite a difficult question, actually. Right, moving on. So, question for me and Saskia. Did we find any material or tools that are non-digital that can be used during the workshop, such as accessible information on renewable energy, education games and stuff? So yes, in the catalogue, there are examples of non-digital tools, including sort of prompt cards, and you sort of have these discussion cards and you can sort of share them out and support that. And I'm sure that can be made accessible by drawing upon icons and stuff, a bit like what Fiona was saying, like if you can't put something in an icon, maybe you need to rethink about it. So that was one example I can think of off the top of my head. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Saskia.
No, you're right, Amy. There are examples in the toolkit, so we provided the link. But what we would really appreciate is if you think that basically we can add some extra details or extra links or anything that you might find useful, please let us know. Otherwise, yes, there are some examples, and there are actually links to different projects that use different types of strategies as well. So there is quite a lot of information provided, but still, please let us know if there is anything missing, because that's why we are also organizing this workshop, for just to hear a bit more in terms of like what might be useful and suitable. Thank you.
And it might be also useful to look in your own region. Probably you are not the first thinking about energy poverty or engagement. For example, we already found it's like a card game with all household appliances, or the most common ones, old ones, new ones, and then you have for each appliance a card stating, okay, a washing machine, an old one, you use it 3 times a week. Oh, this would cost you so much on a year basis, so much water, so much energy, and you can restart comparing them in a quite easy way. Some other organization here in Belgium already developed it. What we just needed to do was update the prices a little bit because it was from 2015. But I think probably there is a lot of material you can start from already out there.
Yeah, amazing. So then, Fionn, what is it that made your first participants join despite the everyday struggles they have? Is it essentially the dialogue space you're giving for their personal questions?
It's really depending, I think, on the person you are talking with. One of the participants reacted like, oh, thinking about problems and suggesting ideas, that's not really something for me. But then we explained to her, like, okay, we will not just think and talk, we'll do very practical things. For example, you can bring your energy bill and we will check all the difficult words, and we will try to make your dream bill, let's say, and really do interactive stuff like that. And for one of our participants, that was really interesting. Say, okay, but that's something I can do. That's something I like, working in groups and being creative. For others, it's the general topic, saying, okay, energy is so much on the news right now. It has such an impact on my daily life that I can sacrifice some of my free time to join. And for others, it's really about, I have a lot of questions and there will be a forum to ask them. So it's really depending on the person you're talking with. So it's good to, during conversation, you should be like a little bit probing what is holding them back. Why are they interested? And so it's, depending on the person. And for sure, it's not always a success. I mean, we have talked to a lot of people and a lot of people already said no as well. That's normal as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think, so I've managed to miss one question. So I think it's this one. Oh, here we go. Could you show us what content you will spread over the 6 half days?
Yes.
You need to stop. Have you got it like on a slide? Do you want me to stop sharing my screen? Or
I will open the program where I made it, but it's quite a lot to go through it today, and it's also in Dutch. So for only one pilot, understandable. But let's see. Okay, maybe I will show it after the break because my program is not responding at the moment. But what I can share already is that we made them sort of customer journey. So what are people from getting to know the pilots until really using the pilot. So getting energy from EcoPower, with all the small steps in between. And then each workshop is dedicated a bit to one aspect of that. So we start really with, for example, around the theme of communication. Then we speak about, okay, where are the organizations you can go for advice, but also you have letters, you have folders, you have TV commercials, you have all kinds of communication. And we, one of the interactive things we will do is just trying to make up our own communication based on all kinds of examples, like what is really speaking to you in a sense of images, but also wording. How would you explain it in your own words? So each session is dedicated to one of those themes. So I think we have communication, and then the intake, so getting to know actually the pilots and speaking about it with a partner organization. Then we have one specifically for administrations of contracts, and not to really, it's a bit the boring stuff, but the really important stuff, because everyone should understand if they sign a contract what's in it without reading small letters, and we really want to work with them, together with them, to make it understandable. And then the part where you are actually using the social share. And then we have a bit of a summary workshop where we have this all aspects combined, and we and then also a test workshop where, for example, if out of the first workshops comes, okay, we want to go to the housing department, that we really stage the whole process, and we, with the groups, we go through the whole process to gather their feedback about that as well. And we end with a reception, and policymakers invited to share our experience. But I can show some of the templates maybe after the break.
Wonderful, thank you. And that's all the questions. And
All right.
hopefully Mentimeter was a useful way of everyone sharing their questions when they came to their head. Yeah, is it time for a quick break? Sashka, I'll pass over to you.
Yes, thank you everybody for joining us for the first part. So we can maybe have a 5-minute break. We are running slightly late, but we can have a 5-minute break, and then we can go with the interactive part. Is Finn and Christina that fine with you? Is that okay? So a 5-minute break. Oh, Isabel has a question. Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, very brief. I have to go a bit earlier. I have to leave a bit earlier, so I don't know if I make the next session. But I don't know if that's a problem. Sorry for that.
Amy, can we stop the recording, because maybe we